Okay, great. People have started coming in. Another minute, and then we can jump right in because for on YouTube, you will still have the link over there. Do want to be respectful of everyone's time and begin on time, right? Okay, guys, let's get started. Okay. Can we move to the next slide? I'm just going to quickly introduce the red pen, introduce myself, and then we'll just jump right in because everyone is here mainly to just not listen to me, but listen to our wonderful panelists. So I'm going to give them as much airtime as possible, right? So just a quick blurb about the red pen for those of us who are joining us for the first time. We are a premium boutique education advisory company advising students across pre-college admissions, undergraduate, postgraduate, MBA, boarding schools, and educational career counseling, including PhDs and executive MBAs as well, executive degrees as well. We have been in business close to 12 years, close to 13 years, actually 12 years plus, 1,000 plus admits in top universities. Every year we work with close to 800 to 900 students. 70 plus team members representing 9 nationalities and across multiple countries. So at least the MBA team has consultants from all top business schools in US, Canada, Europe, Singapore, Dubai, and India. We of course have multiple membership professional and professional affiliations. However, I will speak mainly about AGAC, the Association of International Graduate Admission Consultants. I'm part of the board of AGAC, and I think it's a wonderful organization where all international consultants around the world get an opportunity to liaise with business schools, admissions officers, during our annual conference and during the summer time when applications open, and provide accurate information when it comes to our applicants who are applying to business schools. All right, moving on. These have been our results in the past cycle, and these are, some of the list of business schools on in that gray box are basically people, from our team who have MBAs from these schools. So that's our team of consultants, great amount of scholarship. This year we worked with close to 100 applicants, and these are some of the results. I think there's some results on the next slide as well. So these are the results from this year. Great, turnout. I will not, share the number because there's a lot of, number of interviews, wait lists, final admits. There's a lot of this in the mix. So I don't have those numbers at the top of my head, but I do know that this year results have been absolutely phenomenal. And there are, the only thing I think, that I take immense pride on is pushing people beyond what they think is possible. And every single year we have, applicants that we work with, for whom, we made a real difference. People who have never thought that, I would make it to a Harvard Business School or make it to an M7 school or make it on a full scholarship. And I think those are, some of the value addition. That being said, MBA application is not a conundrum. It's something that you have to invest a lot of time and effort in, and you have to really, give all of yourself. I think, the applicants who are most invested are the ones who are most successful. And I think you will hear from the panelists soon on this as well. So moving on, I want to just jump right into this. And before I ask all the panelists, okay, this is a profile evaluation criteria slide, which is usually my favorite. But I'm going to skip this today. I'm not going to speak much about this because there are multiple webinars in which you will hear me talking about this. So let's move on. All right, this is today's panel. Before I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, everyone who is in attendance, please post your questions in the chat box. Because while I have a list of questions, I will be looking at questions that you guys are posting, and I will take them, as and when y'all are posting it, as and when I can weave them into the conversation and not wait till the end Q&A because the time is never enough. Okay. So let's jump right in. I would like each of the panelists, and we can go, the way your names are appearing on screen, to give your name, the business school that you attended, and your pre-MBA professional role and organization, and post-MBA organization or career plans.
Sure. So let me kick it off. Hi, everyone. My name is Varun Parekh. I'm currently just wrapping up my MBA at Wharton. Before Wharton, I was working in private equity in India. So I did a couple of years at Apollo. And then before that, I was at a mid-market Indian fund called Samara Capital in India. After business school, I'm going to be joining a mid-market private equity firm here in the US. So focusing on buyout investing, but transitioning to the markets in the US. Siddharth?
All right, yeah. Okay, guys, I'm up. Hello, everyone. My name is Siddharth Parekh. Currently also wrapping up my MBA very soon at the Darden School of Business at the University of Virginia. Before Darden, I had a wide variety of experiences. I started out in corporate strategy across a couple of different industries and then transitioned to something very different in a family business in textiles, had my own venture on the side, and then decided this was the time to go to business school. I interned at the Boston Consulting Group in the Dallas office over the summer, and that's where I'm moving to next in a few months.
Hi everyone, my name is Mohit and I'm currently at Kellogg. I think I'm the one whose MBA will end the last. My MBA is still, I graduate in the next 2 months. So let's see how the next 2 months go. Prior to Kellogg, I worked in consumer goods in Nigeria. And then I worked for a B2B e-commerce startup, much like Udan, but for micro retailers in Africa. Post-MBA, I will be joining Robert Baird, which is a mid-market investment bank in their Chicago office. And thankfully, through my MBA, I have been able to make the transition that I wanted to from consumer goods to moving to investment banking. Fortunately, I've been able to make the transition and glad that I've been able to do so. Happy to share my experiences around it.
Last of me. Hi everyone, this is Pratyusha Simharaju. I'm also with Varun at Wharton School of Business, graduating in May. Before Wharton, I was in tech industry, been there for about 7 years. I was at Google as a program manager. And before that, I was in Deloitte. I was a tech consultant there. I also started a company which was in edtech space. So these were some of the experiences before Wharton. And post-Wharton, I wanted to leverage the Wharton experience to move into climate tech. So I interned at a climate startup and hope to move into climate tech or climate roles in tech companies. So either of them. Happy to talk a little more about that in next discussions. Back to you, Preeti.
Great. Well, thank you so much. There's one question already which has come in, which is asking, we would like to know about the pre-MBA qualifications as well. Can you all quickly just do a roundup on that?
Yeah, sure. I can kick it off. So I did my BCom from HR, and then I've also done my CA with that. So basically that's all I've done pre-MBA.
Siddharth?
So I also went to undergrad in Mumbai. I did my engineering and business dual degree from NMIMS. So if there's any questions around applying with a pre-existing business degree, master's degree, that's an interesting one.
I did engineering from IIT Bombay, civil engineering, and then apart from that, I did the CFA program. So that's from my side.
And I did engineering again in computer science from Osmania University in Hyderabad.
Great. Okay, thank you guys. And before I jump into the questions, just so that if anyone watching this is wondering why there is not much diversity on the panel in terms of women, we did reach out to many women applicants, successful admits as well, but Pratyusha was the only one who responded and who's over here. So I don't want this panel to be a representation of what's happening at business schools. Women are definitely more welcome, especially from international a pool of applicants. So that should not be taken as a dampener, all right? All right, moving on from this humor. Now let's talk about the overall experience, right? I want each of you to just, quickly talk about, how do you manage the workload? I remember when I was studying at business school, everyone said there is academics, there is extracurricular clubs, networking, and then there is your career, which is your job and, your internships, and then putting them in a full-time job. How did you manage these three pillars? And what was, what is your advice to someone, who will be starting their business school journey now? Pratyusha?
Oh, yeah. I can start off. Actually, let me introduce you to a few acronyms that are very famous in MBA, which is the first thing is FOMO, fear of missing out. And once you get, the moment you join any business school, I think the first thing that everyone goes through is FOMO. And because of that, you will end up doing and investing in too many spaces, join a lot of clubs, take up too many classes, or go to every social event possible. That is certainly there, and everyone goes through that cliff, does too much, and then by I think mid first year, you realize that you can step back and kind of relax and kind of focus on things that you want to do. And that is where the second acronym comes in, which is joy of missing out. You'll be happy to miss out things and do the things that you care about, that you appreciate. So I think my tip for balancing all of this is intention. Even before you go to MBA, if you have a plan that these are the classes that I want to take, these are the ventures I want to join or do the GMCs, this is my focus. Some people come in with the focus of just networking. They just want to make as many friends as possible. So they are invested more on social side of things. So just trying to think beforehand and going with that intention will help a lot.
Siddharth, what do you think?
I can chime in as someone who goes to a school which has a reputation of having quite a rigorous workload. It does tend to get like that, right? So it comes in waves is also what I would add to what Patricia was saying. Like you're gonna have these three balls in the air, and you can only juggle at max two at a time. If you try to do three, you might sacrifice a fourth one, which is sleep. And I tried doing that. I did not work out well. But essentially, it's like you sort of come in, early August, September to campus. You're focused on the social piece, and then you're sort of immersing yourself in some of the academic pieces. And then recruiting kicks off in the next couple of weeks for, let's say, some of the structured recruiting processes like banking and consulting. And then so you'll sort of dial your social quotient down and push up your recruiting quotient. So and then as and when the recruiting process concludes, you have other priorities and you again focus more on the social side of things. Second year, again, it comes in different waves. If you're recruiting for something else, you focus on that. Maybe you take some electives that you're really passionate about. A lot of schools offer them in second year. It's all a cycle where you sort of have these different waves coming and going. But just understand that, like Patricia said, you can't really do all of them at the same time.
Great. Varun, do you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I think nothing different than what's already been said. It is a challenge, especially the first year. It's extremely chaotic. But I think like Patricia said, that in the first 3 or 4 months, people figure out where their spaces are and what they want to spend time on. And I think honestly, as overwhelming as it is, that the period of being overwhelmed is part of the journey. So I don't think you can not do that. I think it's good to try to do everything initially, get overwhelmed, figure out what you want to do, and then sort of pick and choose. So I wouldn't say that anyone should be too concerned or worried about it. It's just part of the flow. Everyone's going through the same thing. So yeah, that's all I'd say.
But then would you say that, just join whatever club that you feel like and then figure your way out?
Yeah, I think that's the approach I used. That's the approach which a lot of other people use, because you don't know what you don't know. And I think weirdly, you end up enjoying the things you least expect to enjoy. And you find similar people at the places you least expect. So I think if you don't do it, if you don't join a club which you have some remote interest in, you may not ever get to experience that, but then you find the most joy in that, over the rest of the period at your school. So I'd highly recommend doing that. if possible.
Understood. Mohit, how did you kind of juggle all of this? And when you were you changed your career, like you said, from consumer goods to investment banking, and which we will speak about. How did you kind of crack into that? But what was your focus? Did you just go on a rampage signing all of this, going into clubs and networking and, not missing out all the beer and pizza parties? Or you were like, you know what, I'm focused on my academic and my career change. So I need to just, make more friends in the career advising center.
So for me personally, because I knew that I wanted to make this transition, I kept a very quarter to quarter or semester to semester approach.
Yeah.
Because in the first semester or first quarter of it, first term, it's very recruiting heavy, with some of it overflowing into the second quarter, second term. I focus a lot more on recruiting, because once I knew that once I was done with recruiting, I would be able to focus on the other pillars. And quite early on during our MBA, one of our professors told us that this is like the three burners that you have. At any point of time, you can have two of these burners on. If you have all three of them on, you will get burnt out. So be careful. I followed his advice, and first term in the first half of second term was focused on recruiting. And then once I was done with it, I switched gears and then moved more towards the club side of things and socializing side of things. One highlight of all of this, and something I would recommend people, is that while you are, which might sound very similar to what Varun said, that while you're going in with some intention, have a lot of leeway as well as in what experiences you want to have. Because it's a 2-year program, you're spending a lot of money. You want to be intentional about things so that you have a sense of direction, but don't be so hardline into this is exactly what I want to do, because you never know what new experience the MBA journey will take you to, and you might possibly like it a lot more than what you initially intended to do. So that's an advice. Have some leeway, but at the same time be a little bit intentional so that you're not just all over the place.
Agree, absolutely agree, because there's a lot of surprise. I think I feel that an MBA journey is like a kid in a candy store. You're just you're overwhelmed in such a nice way. And it's interesting that Pratyusha spoke about FOMO, because this is exactly what one of the admissions directors at Columbia Business School said last year when I was visiting Columbia as a part of the AGAC conference. She said, you know what? The one thing that I've seen across every MBA student is they're just plagued by FOMO. They just want to do everything. They just feel that, my time here is limited. I need to make the most of everything. But if I could, just change one thing, if I could go back, is I would just, listen more for the gold, because exactly like you said, this professor gave you this advice and you listen to it. And there's so much, amazing advice and experiences that people are sharing on campus all the time. That, if it's difficult to just hold on to everything, but it's definitely transformational, over a long period of time, as we all see. How has, and this, I think, we don't need to kind of have all four of you answer every question, but, chip in if you have something very interesting to share about any particular question that I'm asking. How has a business school's network, right, your classmates as well as the alumni network, influenced your professional opportunities, during your MBA journey? What percentage that has played a role?
Maybe I can kick it off, because I think it's made a huge difference for me. So I mean, just some context. I was transitioning from working and investing in India to the US, and then more from a bulge bracket to a more mid-market sort of focused investing strategy. So I had to, I mean, in the USP is a very different market. It's obviously more local because it's mid-market, and you really got to understand how to, start with recruiting, and then also on the job, how to go about, the day-to-day. So I think what, at least with Wharton's focus in sort of private equity and finance that they have, I was able to find a great network of people who have done this pre-MBA, and really talk to them and get to know how to be better at interviewing, how to be better on the job, what to expect from the role, So going into my summer internship, I had a sense of all the things that I had to work on while I was there to sort of get a return offer. I also had a very good sense of all the sort of communication, cultural changes that I would see on the sort of floor while working. And I think all those things just help take out a lot of um, anxiety and also, just help you prepare better. So I think in that sense, the entire network, depending on whatever career you want to choose, and this is not limited to investing, obviously, I think you get a very good network of people around you who you can just, do a quick coffee chat with and understand the lay of the land better and just feel a bit more comforted about your decisions and get some predictability and structure to what you're going to get into.
Anyone else? How did alumni networks or your network basically, influence your professional journey at business school?
I can talk about it a little bit. So
As it does.
I recruited for consulting, and although that industry does have like a very structured recruiting process, like all these firms come to your campus and then they put on a ton of events. But eventually what you do end up doing is networking a lot within the firms and the offices that you sort of want to end up in. And a lot of that is sometimes alumni driven. So really having that network of alumni in the places that you want to be is really important, because there's like, thousands of people vying for some of these jobs, and having those sponsors within those firms who, who've gone through the same experiences that you have, that you can relate to as let's say a person who's going to the same program, is something that I think was very, very important, having that shared experience, because that allows you to build those connections, and then they can be your sponsors during the recruiting process, as well as, when you, let's say, intern there, or even after you join full time. Like I've seen, my school's network work very, very well within, especially within that industry, as people progress up their career.
One thing that I would like to add is that while you can reach out to your peers for something that you'll be doing right after B school, what I also noticed is that you could also use them as a resource for longer term plans right after your first job. What is it that you want to do? Because oftentimes we have it figured out before B school what we want to do right after B school, but what after that? And I think talking to your peers is a great way to understand in a risk-free environment what has their experience been working in the Indian industry, and to figure out if that is, to eventually determine if that is the right thing for you to do. Apart from that, there are different avenues wherein you can learn about different industries. So I'm sure at other schools as well, there are these fireside chats that happen at school, and executives come to school very often. So you could leverage that as an opportunity to understand about their experiences, and then network with them and have them in your networks, that you can eventually leverage them for your transition.
Great. And I do agree that, people are so helpful in a business school, and that environment is just so helpful and collaborative that, even the most guarded people, eventually I'd seen even my own classmates just put their guard down, because you're just, on that note, I'm just going to ask a question, which is not, I didn't plan for it. Was anyone ever cold called in class? And, was it a very, was it an experience that you did not expect it would be, but it actually turned out to be something that you were like, good? I will share one of my experiences, but I wanted to ask anyone, have you been cold called? It's like a case study is going to be discussed till like 8 a.m, and then, you're like, shit, I've not read anything. Please share one of those experiences.
I think I can share this. This is very recent, so I can share this. So there's this negotiation class that we have, and they were doing fishbowl in the class. So calling two people and having the negotiation in front of everyone. And honestly, I wouldn't go for it, because negotiation 101, I would try to do that in private setting. And I was called, and the professor was looking at me and literally forced me to get out of my chair and do it. even though in the moment I was super scared and didn't want to do it, hated it, totally hated it. But after the experience, I think I could see that when I was speaking, I changed. I was using the skills that she had shared in the class. And after the experience, I felt much more confident. And we had to write a reflection paper on that. I did think that I did change. And even though that pressure, that it changes you a little bit.
All right. Yeah, I had a very funny experience. In fact, two of them. I think one was similar in a negotiation. Though, of course, the negotiations were done one-on-one, behind closed doors. I think this was the first day of class after that whole residential week, and I was asked to just me and my partner, we were just asked to get up, and we were like, okay, share your negotiation experience. How did you do this? And boy, I don't want to go into details, but I had it so wrong. I said, this is what I did, and the professor in front of the whole class, she was like, but that is such a dumb thing to do. And it was so embarrassing. But I still remember that because, that has helped me approach negotiations so differently. She was like, no, that is not how you approach negotiations. This is, you have to go in knowing, what the other person may not want, what you want as well. So, you need to know what they want, which may be very different from you. And that is, that sets the ground for a great negotiation. Anyway, this is not about me. So now academic experience, like, is there, I wanted to ask about a specific project or a case study that you felt particularly challenged about, but we can broaden this question and say, was there any particular subject at your particular business school? Because I'm sure there are people, who have Wharton, Darden, Kellogg on their lists. So are there any specific courses that you feel that, this was a value add for me, especially Darden, so that you should talk about, because Darden is so known for its rigorous academic, experience. What really stood out? What was a particular project, case study, course that stood out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So like, yes, Darden does tend to focus a little bit more on the academics, and how that structure is like most of first year, you have the core curriculum where everyone goes through the same program. You can't test out of any of these classes. So really it's a shared experience among all of your classmates. So that actually helps build connection in certain ways. And there's like a ton of different experiences and subjects I'd like to talk about, but one in particular, there's this class, it's offered as an elective in the second year. It's called Paths to Power. And it's essentially in some ways the antithesis of, whatever intuitive business sense would have you say, like, outside of being like, oh yeah, you need to do this, or you need to play your part, or like be politically correct, but like, how do you actually leverage your position to get into a relative position of power? How do you actually keep that power? How do you manage the power dynamics between your managers, your peers, and how do you actually come out on top? It is a very, very interesting class, very workshop driven, very intimidating at times as well, because we were like negotiating in front of our classmates. There's some backstabbing going on. There was a lot of stuff. It's basically like Survivor, but in the class. And that was a really, really transformational experience for me, because it either confirms or goes against a lot of the intuitions that you have, like how would I react in this situation? But it turns out you might have been served better by doing the exact opposite. And it really changed the way I think about a lot of these things. So that's a really good one. And if anyone does end up at Darden, look up Paths to Power by Peter Bellamy.
Nice. Mohit, tell us, any specific course at Kellogg which really called out to you?
Yeah, I think in general, I have divided courses into two parts. One are the more quantitative courses, and then there are these soft skills courses. I would highly recommend anyone who does an MBA to consider these soft skills courses, because the hard skills courses has stuff that you can even read up online and understand on your own. But the other courses, which includes negotiations, is something you will get to experience in a B school environment. So the one that stands out for me is executive presentations. And being someone who is not that extrovert and who does not have significant public speaking experience, it really brought me out of my comfort zone, wherein the first couple of lectures were around actually doing theater improv and putting yourself out there. And then from there to at the in the final lecture, giving a presentation of more or less something like a TED talk was really transformational. And I was able to, and I realized that how important it is to have these soft skills, which you will eventually use in your life and career.
That's a great example. And, it brings me to another, sorry, I keep going to this whole cold calling thing, but it brings me to another example which I had. And I don't know if any of y'all know Bruce Greenwald at Columbia Business School. He used to conduct this massive class on value investing because it was so popular. And I think all of us went on the first day. Eventually, I think he said that, if you don't think this class is for you, you opt out right now. And eventually, I think the second day, I just opted out of the class. So I don't know what happened later on. But on the first day of class, he said that, what, I have an algorithm where I will cold call people who are the least prepared. And he said, my algorithm is very good. And his algorithm was bloody good because I had opted out, but when the class started, the first name that was mine that he had called. But someone said, she's opted out of the class. So that was, I think, pretty good. So he said, I have this algorithm which, where I'm going to cold call people. And I always end up picking people who are the least prepared. The reason I do this is if you are able to talk for 2 minutes in a class full of 300 people without any preparation, this will prepare your mental muscle to, speak in boardrooms with the least amount of preparation. So my idea is not to throw you guys under the bus. And had I taken his class, I would have definitely benefited from, I think that, preparing on that mental muscle, which I never really paid any attention to. But this is, I think, what business school experience really is about, just constantly being out of your comfort zone, constantly being surprised, constantly, being on the edge all the time. And, sometimes, and I think, just before we started this panel, Varun said that, my brain cells are completely like, I completely get you, Varun, but it's like exercising in the gym. You feel that you've lost all your muscle strength, but in that recovery process, you actually come back stronger, and your neural pathways are just stronger than ever. So I think that definitely makes a huge difference. Now I know that except none of you are from Booth, and everyone had the core curriculum plus electives. How did you guys go about choosing your electives?
Yeah, maybe I can kick that off. So I think so at Wharton, I think the program was a bit more flexible than some of the other schools. At least that's what I'd like to believe. But so we could actually test out and waive out of a lot of the core early on. I think a lot of folks I know did choose to do that. So depending on what your background is, economics, corporate finance, marketing, you could just test out of those from the first semester, and you could get into electives as early as the first semester. There's pros and cons to that, but that's a separate topic. And so given my sort of prior experience in finance, I didn't want to do a major or pick a lot of electives in finance. And there's this other path we have here called OIDD, which is Operations, Informations, and Decisions. And what I liked the most about that entire path was that there was a mix, like Mohit said, of sort of quantitative and these soft, touchy-feely classes like negotiations and influence, where there aren't too many numbers. So I think I picked that part, and I did all my electives in that path and did a major in that, or sort of in that under that department. And then so I think there's two ways you can do it. A lot of people just choose to go deeper in what they've already done. So if they were in corporate strategy, they would do a management major and just try and cover as many frameworks. Because the other big advantage of doubling down on something you've done is you get a lot of these electives have a lot of speakers and industry stalwarts that come to class and talk to you. And I think other than the course content and the framework, I think hearing from these professionals is the most rewarding, because they've kind of done the career path, or they know what you need to do and what you need to avoid. you also can get in touch with them and, kind of, if you're a TA in a class, for example, have a longer term relationship with them. So I think from that perspective, it does help to stick to some stuff in your industry and double down on that. But yeah, I think so. I did a bit of finance and operations, but obviously I spend most of my time in operations and decisions.
Mohit, how did you choose electives when you... Sorry, Pratyusha, go ahead.
No worries.
Go ahead. I didn't realize you were talking. Sorry.
Okay. So mine was a little different, kind of changed a lot in between. In my essay, I actually wrote that I want to do entrepreneurship and want to start my social impact company kind of thing. So I went in with the idea that I'll do entrepreneurship and operations because operations is STEM. So even that is something that as internationals we need to consider if the major is STEM or not. So this was the idea, but then in the first year I took innovation, which was part of the entrepreneurship, but I also took sustainability strategies, and that class specifically it kind of covered sustainability in all aspects, all businesses, different types of businesses, packaging or manufacturing or different things. And after that class, I decided to take up sustainability. So I did my major in sustainability because of that class. And in fact, all of my initiatives, all of my projects, all of my club activities changed after that class. So the good thing about classes is also that you can take the class, sit for 2-3 classes, and then decide if you want to take the class or not. And some classes actually changed the entire path. This was one of them.
That's a very good insight. So I think everyone, who's listening to this webinar even now or even a recording later on should know that, that option exists at Wharton. Does it exist, at Darden and Kellogg? Siddharth and Mohit, can you just take a class, sit in on 2 or 3 classes and then decide if you want to take the elective or no?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. You can sit in, and add as many classes as you want. And then there's a add drop period before which you need to sort of drop the classes you don't want.
Understood. Is that the same at Kellogg as well, Mohit?
At Kellogg, we cannot attend any lecture. There's a bidding for different courses, and then eventually the courses that you get after bidding are the courses you can attend. But having said that, you can informally have a conversation with the professor right before the first lecture. And in most cases, they are okay, unless the class is full. They are okay with you sitting in and seeing if it's a class you would like to have. Alternatively, there's this thing called audit, which we have. So you won't get a credit for it, but you can just sit through the entire class and you can audit the course.
Yeah, it was the same at Columbia Business School. We had the whole bidding process. So we had these bidding points and we could audit as many classes as we could. So I had done that, both of those actually. That's very good. Just on the academic experience, many a times the whole academic experience is, that's what I feel. My entire takeaway, I think, at Columbia was the whole academic experience. I just enjoyed. I was interested in studying. I was just interested in reading those books, listening to professors, and attending class. I'm not interested in network, not interested in anything else. But I have seen time and again when I talk to many prospective applicants, the whole idea about MBA is that, it's this degree which, you cannot sort of say, I have, I get a, that I get a license to be a doctor, license to be a lawyer, master's in finance or CFA. It's not one of those. It's not anything specialized, right? You're like a butterfly moving from flower to flower. And at the end of the whole experience, God knows what you're really left with. How do you think the MBA curriculum, the academic curriculum, really prepares you for the real world challenges of business? This answer, I think, I think you will be better placed to give this answer 5 years from now, but I will still hear that answer right now. Yeah, Pratyusha.
I think I really like my classes and really appreciate the pedagogy here. It is they bring in so many cases, they have so many examples, so many guest speakers. Definitely is real-time learning. The one thing that I thought is that it informs you, even though you might not remember all the frameworks, but you know that there is something like this which you can refer back when you actually need it. So that is something that I've learned. And the other thing is I've become more comfortable being in situations where I am uncertain, where I don't know the answer, and going and figuring it out with a team or figuring out how do I figure it out online, or it just gave me more methods and tools so that I can do it easily.
Anyone else? Academic experience?
Will second what Pratyusha said. You can always refer back to material to figure out what you want to do. And during the MBA, I think a lot of the focus has to be on the how and why certain things are being done, why certain business decisions were taken in those environments, rather than the nitty-gritties of it. And then eventually, when you are in the real world, in the workplace, you can use the whys and that understanding to apply it eventually, and just refer back to the material for the hard skills. That can always happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also like Varun to answer this question.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that for there are some classes and experiences. I mean, and in academic experience, I'm also including a lot of trainings that are given maybe outside of classes. And what I'm specifically alluding to is, for example, people who are transitioning careers and going into investment banking. Wall Street Prep would come every weekend and give sessions and trainings on building a DCF, on building an investment memo on campus, right? So I don't think the academic experience is restricted just to what courses and electives you take. And those classes were packed out for people recruiting in investment banking. Someone who may not have made a DCF in their life before can now come and do a 40-hour training with Wall Street Prep, learn to make a DCF, do well in their investment banking internships, and then do well on the job. So I think there are some definitive hard skills that you could learn through the academic experience. And I think then there are some more sort of strategic, management concepts and frameworks which may not be too relevant immediately post business school, but as you grow up the corporate ladder, that's something, that should definitely come into use.
Great. And I think, Siddharth, for you, I think what you learn in business school, and I think it translates straight into your job at BCG. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it does lend itself a little bit, especially with the case method. It transitions well both to the recruiting process, because case interviewing also it sort of builds that muscle, and on the job as well, because like you said, like you talked earlier about cold calling and not being prepped, like that does happen a lot at Darden as well. And since it's all very case-based, situation-based, like you're really thinking on your feet and figuring out what you do if you were in the protagonist position. And that has helped me a lot and has helped my classmates a lot.
Great. For those of you listening, let me just share that, your MBA applications is literally a tip of the iceberg. The real fun really starts after you land on campus. So if you thought that, applying to business school is hard, wait till actually, you start drinking from a fire hose on campus. So I'm not surprised that the application process is what it is, and it really tests, who is really invested in the whole process, because you really need to be able to just, withstand the pressures, once you land on campus. There's a question that someone has asked: would the panelists be comfortable sharing their GPA and GMAT GRE scores? So if you all are not comfortable, please don't. But if you all are, please share. I guess no one wants to share their scores. So I'm sorry, but I will not push anyone to share their scores. That's totally fine. I can just let you know that there has been a sort of mix of scores. And in some cases, because I know all of y'all, and I do have a decent memory to know, what range each of you were. So let me tell you that all of them were very good in terms of their academic credentials. And when we assessed their profiles, we knew that they would be the way their overall profile was. It wasn't about, that 1 point here, there, or whatever, because, even if you're an IIT Bombay 8-point plus GPA, it's still very, very challenging, because many people from IIT Bombay or Delhi, Madras will apply with a 9-point plus GPA. You're still, struggling to keep your head above the water in that applicant pool. So I will not kind of say that, it was one thing or the other, but I will say that all of their profiles were such that, we had the confidence that they would be able to withstand the academic rigor of a business school program. So that's where I will leave this. Let's move to the fun part of, I think, the whole business degree, which is recruitment and career development, right? Now, how did you guys take advantage of the career services at each of your schools? For me at Columbia, it was great. I think it was very helpful. They were very, very helpful. And I remember there were these sessions, we used to have these breaks, and I don't know, because I did the executive format, not the full time. But there used to be these, sessions where companies would come and talk, and there used to be, club talks and all of that. But the career services sessions used to be always full, all the time, no matter who was talking. Career services, career advising centers at your respective business school, what role did they play? And what is your advice to someone? Anyone? I'd like all of you to answer.
Yeah, I can kick it off. So I think as far as the entire career selection and everything to do with career development is involved, that starts even before you get onto campus, right? So I think that's almost like something that just goes on for better part of the 2 years. And it ebbs and flows, gets busier at times, is less busy at times. So yeah, I think the career office will kind of do these aptitude tests before you get onto school, try to figure out what careers are meant for you, and try to see what horizontal skill sets you have and what careers might fit you. So there's a lot of testing that starts before you even get onto school. I think in our first week or first couple of weeks at school, we had an appointment with our career advisor on what we wanted to do, and we were already working on building our CV and getting it as per the school brand, and we had all these softwares that and advisors that we could leverage to build our CVs. So I think it starts very early. It goes on through the better part of 2 years. Unlike and I think all the schools here generally have really good career advising services. So you will get frequent appointments with your career advisor, and they will counsel you everything from your CV to your story to your elevator pitch to preparing for interviews to negotiating your compensation and salaries once you do have an offer. If you have two offers and you want to pick between one and you want to brainstorm with someone confidentially, you can do that with them. If some interviewer has gone quiet on you for 2 weeks, and you don't know whether that means a yes or a no, you can talk to them, sort of discuss how the interview process went, and maybe they'll have a couple of things to add as to how you should play it going forward. So I think you can lean on to them for almost everything, and they're very helpful. I think the only thing on this point, unlike some of the other experiences that we discussed earlier, that you should come with a bit of an open mind. I think some candid advice I could give is on the career front, try to come in with a sense of what you want to do. Maybe a couple of things. I think a lot of people have this notion that, oh, I'll get there and figure it out. I think in an idealistic world, it could be like that, but it's not. I think a lot of people come here deciding they want to do investing, and then they're deciding or consulting, and then within consulting, MBB. So I think that people do come in with a sense of what they want to do, and the faster you can decide what you want to do for the summer and post MBA, I think you can be more focused. And at least I've seen the best outcomes for people that have been focused early on and just run with whatever they wanted to do, at least for the summer.
Understood.
Just picking up where Varun left off, like that's perfectly right. Like you need to come in with an answer. It might not necessarily be the right answer, but definitely having an answer helps coming in. And touching on your original question about the career development piece, like there's a great career office which does, very similar things to what Varun said. But what a lot of people do find surprising is how also student-driven the career experience is. So at least here at Darden, the student clubs, especially the career clubs, and I'm a little bit biased because I did the consulting club leadership stuff in the second year. But they also are a large part of the entire experience. So putting on the kind of workshops you need, putting on educating people on, okay, what does your life actually look like in this kind of career path? And that's very helpful for career switchers such as myself. And then, prepping you for case interviews, figuring out what that looks like, and networking and all of that. So like, it's very, very student driven, in addition to like having the layer of the career center, the student clubs, which is again a broad layer. And then at least at Darden, we have a program which is like a second year coach. I'm sure other schools have some form of that as well, where you're paired with a second year who either interned or recruited for the industry that you want to ideally transition into. And that's the person you can also use for a lot of one-on-one sessions, feedback from someone who's very recently gone through the process just 12 months ago, on all of those things. So that's kind of how, like, you have these three layers with the career center, student clubs, and more one-on-one focusing on the second year coach piece that you can sort of navigate and use all of these things. But I will caveat, like, compared to some experiences in other countries, like, it's a lot more self-driven than what you would expect. You are given all the resources you need and more to succeed, but it really is your responsibility to make the most of them. So that's just some one piece of advice there.
Agree, and I could not agree more. I could not agree more. I mean, like, this is why I said that, what, if you feel like you're not on business school, because then you are just one amongst the many amazing people who are on campus, and then they give you all the resources, but then it's up to you. Not everyone over and above, tap into alumni networks. And yeah, Mohit, you had something to add.
No, I was just saying that you're breaking up a bit.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I got that message. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah. Similar to what Siddharth said, apart from the career center, there are student bodies, specifically clubs that are career driven. So there's consulting club, investment banking and capital markets club, tech club, and I'm sure every school has it. For Kellogg specifically, the clubs largely drove the recruiting process because it's quite structured. They have workshops and they guide us through the process. And within the club, there are these interview prep groups, which is 3 second years with 6 to 7 first years. And that smaller group kind of is a place wherein you talk to the second years about how to approach the process, how to and the first second years guide you through the entire process. There are weekly meetings, check-ins with your mentees. So because I benefited from this in the second year, I then eventually also took up a position in the as a mentor in the club.
Great. There's one other question which I had, and in the interest of time, I think I have only a few questions left, so I definitely will take them. This is very interesting, right? I mean, many prospective MBA applicants ask us that, how does, why do post-MBA goals play such an important role in my MBA application, right? So there are two things I want to cover over here. One is I want each one of you to tell me, what did you write as your post-MBA goals in your applications, and how did they evolve through the business school journey? And secondly, I want Varun and Mohit both to discuss about how did you guys manage to get investment jobs in the US. Varun still had private equity experience, but still breaking into private equity is hard because there are so many people with prior private equity experience prior to the MBA, and it's not happening at many business schools. And Mohit, you actually, cracked into banking without prior investment banking experience. And business school adcoms many a times say that, that's not something they encourage if it's written in your goals. So what goals did you write What did you want to do? So Pratyusha touched upon that. You said, you wanted to go into social entrepreneurship, but you pivoted towards sustainability. What about the others?
So prior to joining Kellogg, I was working for the startup, and what I had written was I will help them grow the startup to different scale the startup to different countries in Africa, and I will lead that expansion. So that was something that I wrote in my business school application. But I was mentally prepared that I wanted to actually pivot into investment banking. So it was, I mean, those two things didn't align, but I think from an application point of view, I went ahead with the startup story.
Yeah. And it's always good to, I want everyone to just understand this, that this is not about, fabricating your application, but this is taking a realistic stance where you are giving comfort to a business school admissions reader that, you know what, my realistic yet ambitious goal is something like this. So in case, sure, mentally, if you are like, I want to go into banking, and what they see, in regular recruitment cycle is not people, breaking into investment banking on a regular basis. And if that doesn't happen, then what is the plan B? And that's what we encourage and write about that. No one is stopping you from, reaching for the stars and, starting your own space rocket company the day you land on campus, getting $1 billion valuation. No one is going to stop you doing that. But have a plan B ready. Because that's what they want to know. That's what they want to know, that realistically, are you able to succeed on the campus, right? What about you, Siddharth?
Yeah. So kind of similar to Mohit. So I worked in entrepreneurship prior to Darden, and I did say that was a path that I wanted to continue down. And I was like, during my interviews, and I was pretty open about like, hey, this is what I'm thinking now, and this is where I see myself succeeding. But on campus, if I find something that interests me, that's something I could potentially pursue as well. And that thing for me at the time was some general management programs, which would let me like experience a lot of different functions, especially in a market like the US. But eventually I ended up pivoting to consulting, which also does give me a very similar structured approach to business, and seeing a lot of different industries and functional areas. And I still might go down the entrepreneurship route in the future. So yeah, could be full circle there. But yes, I totally agree with you, Preeti. Like when you're applying, they want to see what you bring to the table in terms of discussions in the classroom, and B, can you actually succeed on campus in your goals, whatever you stated they are.
Yeah, great. I think with Varun, I think we already knew that it was a straight story. I think it was, you have not changed from what we wrote in the application. Yeah, Varun.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I rocked the boat in my application. I kept it simple, and I think it was genuine as well. So I think in my case, it was truly at the intersection of what I actually wanted to do, and it just coincided. So I think there's no right or wrong there. But yeah, I think to your question on investing here, I think getting a role in investing here, I think there is a high weightage given to folks who've done investing pre-MBA,
Yeah.
and I think it's disproportionately high. So I think that is one thing, and then there's also the challenge of getting sponsorship, because a lot of firms typically don't try to sponsor because the teams are small, and they just don't want the uncertainty of someone coming in and just potentially being here for a short time, 2 years, 3 years, and then moving, because a lot of the incentives and stuff are tied to very longer term sort of careers. So I think those are the two kind of supply side issues that you face. But other than that, I do think that if you are focused and make use of all the resources and just leverage as many of your peers as possible who worked in the field before, I think it is it's definitely achievable.
Yeah, that's a great piece of reflection, because I would like Mohit to also kind of share with us, how did you how did you crack into investment banking? I'm sure there were so many others. Also, I do feel, Varun, that, investing is also very hyper localized. For someone to say that, what, I have covered the Asian markets and now I'm going to, I want to work at, a private equity firm which is focused on, let's say, startups in the United States. And, the basics may be same, but, an investor will, one, have a very technical expertise, which can be taught, but beyond the point, sophisticated investors are also very intuitive decision makers. They have a pulse on the market. They understand how the economic landscape is shifting. And to sort of know that in a very different environment than where you have prior done investing, that could be a very different challenge. So how do you, I'd like Mohit to also answer this about, how did you crack that?
Yeah, maybe I can take it on the investing front because I have a very specific anecdote here. So, Preeti, what you said is absolutely right. I think whether you see the US, UK and Europe, Middle East and Asia, the investing landscape, the kind of markets, everything is very, very, very different and not as transferable as one might think. What I did in the first year when I was working through my resume is I really tried to make it as tailored to how sort of folks, say a certain few terms or, how they look at deals here. And then when I was practicing my elevator pitch or the way I pitch a deal, I was actually working with people to see how we pitch it here versus how we pitch it in India. So using terms here, if it's an auto business, try to sort of correlate it to the auto markets here and what it would mean for an auto deal here. So I think just showing that you can extrapolate on what you worked on in the past and apply it here. Consumer markets are very different. So specifically, I had a consumer deal on my CV. And obviously growth rates are not as high here. So you talk about what work you've done back in Asia and then extrapolate it to here and what you would do here and what the shape and the nature of the deal would look here. So I think if you can just bridge those two experiences, then I think the interviewers would get a sense that, okay, this person can apply whatever he or she has learned before. And I think that just makes it more comforting for them at least.
That's a great piece of advice. I think, people should really listen to what you said. And, I think this is great. This is very good. Mohit, do you want to add, like, how did you crack into investment banking without no investment banking experience?
Sure. I think there are three layers to it. First and foremost, because consulting and investment banking have a very structured process. So, and I think these two industries are very background agnostic. So if you follow the process, then it is relatively easier to land a job. But apart from that, because I had no background, I did two things. One was doing a pre-MBA internship before joining business school, which then I was able to leverage to eventually weave into my story. Because at the end of the day, you have to have a narrative as in why you want to make the transition, and having that really helped me. And secondly, because I had no technical background, so to build credibility, I studied for and cleared this CFA before joining business school.
Yeah, that's a great point, to do a pre-MBA internship. And I know I can at least think of two more people who I know who did pre-MBA internships in investing with no prior investing experience, but now are, are either with a VC or they are in investing now in the US. Okay, great. Now we're going to wrap up in a bit. But before that, there is one question. And because, we are also catching up after a long time. So, I just feel that, if I hope this could just go on a little longer. Now, there's a very interesting question I want to ask all of y'all. I was reading Indra Nooyi's book, My Life in Full. And, this was, of course, way back, when she went to Yale to do her MBA. And then, she was also in consulting and then she moved on to these other companies and all of that. She gave a very interesting insight. She said, when I was in business school, I realized that sports was actually the language of business. Understanding sports, knowing sports, there was an important game in the morning, people are discussing about it, right? whenever games were happening, that was an opportunity for all of us to sit. And she said, I actually sat down and two of my classmates actually taught me how, how a Super Bowl game, is to be seen. I mean, I struggled with that when I was in the US. And that is one thing neither I was interested, neither did I say that, you know what, okay, this is important. If I'm walking into a business, into a boardroom, perhaps knowing about sports could be, a connector over here. So I never paid attention to this. How many of you all, picked on to this and actually made a concerted effort to learn local sports because you thought this was perhaps, a way for you to, have conversations with people or build those bonds pretty quickly? And I want each of you to answer this question.
Yeah, maybe I can kick it off. That's a very specific but a very pertinent question because it's absolutely true. I think through school, through the summer internship, everything is about basketball, the NFL, baseball, and golf. Right? I think these are like the four things which you'll hear around you all the time. And for me, I mean, I anyway saw a lot of cricket and football, soccer coming in. So I think to add another sport to learn and watch it just seemed like I'd be following sports the whole day and not doing anything else in life. Having said that, I think really again, like you said, it's very important. So as much as you try and avoid it, I think it's probably in your benefit to try and blend in and get to learn about these sports. So I went to a bunch of Philadelphia 76ers games. Basketball's an easy one to sort of get up to speed on fairly quickly. And again, this is one of those things where I went to the first game, thought, okay, I'll just go with a bunch of people and see what it's like, and actually started enjoying it. And before I knew it, I had their app on my phone and I was tracking almost every other game that was happening. So I think that was one sport that I got into, at least tracking. Golf is something that I got into learning post my summer, because at my summer internship, every weekend, folks were just on the golf range. And I would just, walk around the course with the beer in my hand while everyone was playing golf, which looked really stupid. So in my second year, I joined the golf club at Wharton, and they were giving classes at very subsidized rates because it's a very expensive sport to learn. And actually spend the better part of my second year picking up golf, because that's something that's, again, I'm going to have to play going back full time. And then the NFL is more about the Super Bowl. That's again a sport which some folks really love, some folks don't get into it at all. But yeah, again, I understand enough to have an intelligent conversation about it. But yeah, I think the more you try and embed and blend yourself into it, I think it'll only be more beneficial for you, especially if you're looking to make a long-term career here.
Siddharth?
Yeah, I second what Varun said. Like, it's really an investment in your future if you are planning to stay here for a few years. And but that being said, like, I didn't feel it was a necessity in any way for me to help me along my recruiting journey or anything else. You can always find other common points of connection with people, but it's just easier, if you have some of these sports. And at least, like, it's like sporting here is like a major, like, national event. Like, you had the Augusta Masters, which is like one of the most celebrated golf events a couple of weekends ago, and like everything was there. Like, we had Masters themed parties. Like, there's just everything going on that's around all of those things. So it's just easier that way. And I agree with Varun. Golf is a good thing to pick up. It's a great way to spend some time outdoors on the weekends, especially if in terms of geography where you're moving. Like, there's a lot of good golf courses around, stuff like that. So definitely something that I'm getting into as well. But just, you want to make sure you don't sort of speak against someone's team if you don't know what their affiliation is, because people are super passionate about their sports teams. It doesn't matter if they're actually from that part of the country or not. They could be fans from all around the country, but they could be super passionate. And another layer I'll add to that is, like, along with the professional leagues, college sports are absolutely massive.
Yes. This was a revelation for me as well. I was like, wow, college sports is another level over here.
Absolutely. Like if you go to a school, which has a big D1 basketball team or football team, like it's going to be insane. The kind of following that they're gonna have, and the fan following, especially from the undergrads on campus and stuff. Like it's massive. So be prepared for that, and sort of lean into those experiences, the tailgates and everything, and you'll have a good time.
Great. Pratyusha.
It's actually funny that the first person I ever spoke to at Wharton was a former NFL player. And we used to walk home every day for the first few weeks together. So became good friends. And that's when I started learning about NFL. I think apart from what Varun had told, you investing your time, but also there are like viewing parties. A lot of clubs host those. You can go and spend time with them and also learn the game on the go. And also, I think this year, India Club did a really good initiative. Like there are clubs for every country here, and they did an initiative. They hosted a session just to explain how NFL and the grounds are, what's the lingo of the game, and that's actually very, very useful for internationals, I thought.
Yeah.
But personally, the game that I picked up upon is rugby. I started playing this in the second year and wanted to learn a different game. So I picked this up, and it was really fun. Like it was low stakes. I need the previous knowledge or be an expert in it. It was super, super fun.
Great. What about you, Mohit? What was your experience?
Yeah, similar to everyone else, I was shocked by how big sports is over here. And I remember the first time during one of the recruiting events, a banker was talking about football, and I knew that I would not be able to talk about football for more than 10 seconds. So, but having said that, it's not absolutely necessary. While it is helpful, don't let it bog you down, because there are other common grounds that you can find. And after my internship as well, similar to Varun, I realized that a lot of the bankers go out on weekends for golf. And I have planned to do the same, to learn golf. But unfortunately, the weather in Chicago is so beautiful during the winters that it makes it hard for us to go out and learn. But fortunately, spring is right around the corner, and hopefully I'll be able to learn something before I join full time.
Agree. And I, in all said and done, if there was one thing I could have done differently, it's basically learning, about sports. Which is one thing, like, I never bothered. But as if you are serious about, basically business and navigating careers and businesses in the US is very different from, what we're used to in India. Here, you'll find many points of connection. But in the US, it's definitely a language of business. And if you're like, we want to go to leadership levels, and, you want to find common ground between, you want someone to, this is perhaps a bit controversial, but, if you want someone to remember you, if they're choosing between 2 or 3 people, who is going to be my next successor to lead this business unit, they need to know people, and you need to find those points of connection. At the end of the day, all that I'm sure you all have learned in business school is that business is eventually about people. It's about who you know, how you blend in, how you speak each other's language, how comfortable you are, in terms of your vision and your values. And those synergies is what, that you connect through your networks, which, then transforms your careers going forward. All right, I think we're already over time, and this happens all the time. But I am really enjoying this conversation a lot, and I hope that I get to meet all of you all soon. I'm going to just take a few questions which are over here. Many of them require a one-on-one conversation, which is why I have not sort of woven them into our conversation. Someone has asked how to inculcate the habits required to hone different soft skills required to excel as a business professional. Well, that's, I think, it's a very broad question, I would say. And I think, do you guys have any insights on, to hone, these soft skills? How does business school help you inculcate those habits? Because business school what I think this person is asking is that school will teach you, but how do you make them into actionable habits that you are, inculcating in your life on a daily basis?
I can take that up. So we do, of course, have classes on communication, negotiation, influence, leading effective teams, so many soft skill classes, and you can pick whatever you like. But I mean, the other part is there will be opportunities for you to practice them too. For example, there is venture leadership, there is GMC, you can host the track, you could be a club leader, and maybe you can take the leadership positions. And in all of them, you have to practice all the skills that you're actually learning in the class. The other thing is class projects. Almost every other elective has a group presentation or a group project, and that is also one place where you can leverage those skills and practice them. And if you can do them early on in the first semester, for example, I did a venture early on, and I kind of reflected on the leadership styles, my leadership styles. And then I did a conscious decision that everything that I'm doing, I'll try to inculcate, like add one thing or learn one more thing, try this new thing in this thing. So if you can start these things, experiment and reflect upon your things, and then eventually add them as you go on, you have entire 2 years to practice them.
Great. Someone else is asking, when should I start thinking about my MBA? I'm completing my undergrad and I'm figuring out deferred programs. Is this too early? Deferred MBA programs, for those of you who don't know, it's, you apply in the last year of your undergraduate and you get an admit, and then you are able to defer your, intake to anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Is it too early to think about an MBA while they are still completing their undergrad?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on circumstances. I do think there's a huge benefit of coming in with as much work experience as you can within the time window of the school, at least try to be at the school average. If you have the option of getting an admit early, and I do believe the acceptance rates for deferred programs are higher, at least on percentage terms. So if you have the ability to give your GMAT while you're still academically sharp and sort of secure and admit, I think there's no harm in doing that. And then you can obviously try and work for the next 2 to 5 years and figure out what's the best time. So I don't think there's any downside if you have the capacity to do it now. Why not? But obviously try to work through those 4 or 5 years. And I mean, just my personal observation is some of the folks who've come in with very little work experience are, tend to get driven more by the herd versus, figuring out what they actually want to do. And I think if you come in with some more work experience, you'll have a better sense of what you want to do for the next 10, 15 years, and then you can solve for that, because the business school does give you that one shot to pivot careers in your mid-20s or mid or late 20s.
Great. Anyone else? Anything to add? When is it too early to start? I do think that, you should think like 2 years before. Yeah, Mohit, go ahead.
Adding to what Varun said, because it's so circumstantial. For me personally, during the last year of undergrad, I had not thought of doing an MBA, and it was a decision that I made over the next few years, especially when I was working full time. But having said that, if you want to do an MBA and you have your post undergrad job lined up and you know what you'll be doing professionally, then I think having that in your back pocket is an option, because you don't have to worry about the application process afterwards. You can completely focus on your work. But again, it is for people who know what they want to do. So if you're like me and you're still figuring out things during the last year of undergrad, don't sweat it.
Yeah, and
I was exactly. Sorry, Siddharth,
sorry,
please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
That's the one thing I wish I did a little bit differently, is start thinking about this earlier. But even if you don't, and Preeti will attest to that. So my first chat with Preeti to me getting an admit and deciding where I want to go was like 8 months. So like it's okay even if you don't have it figured out. It can work out, but definitely I would have started earlier if I could.
Yeah, Pratyusha.
Mine was actually exactly opposite of Mohit's. I told in my first undergrad interview that I want to do an MBA, which is very weird. So I ended up taking consulting, thinking that this will help me to get to MBA. And then after doing consulting, I ended up going from a technical role to a manager role at Google, So again, I was preparing for MBA, but I dropped MBA because I thought that was a good decision. It will help me grow. Again, after 4 or 5 years, when COVID happened, then I had the time to sit and prepare. So that's how I ended up finally applying and going for MBA.
Great. Now to wrap up, I just want all of you all to just answer one question. What is the one thing that if you had to go back in these 2 years of business school, if there was one thing that you could do differently, what would that be and why? And after that, we'll just wrap it up. What is the one thing that you would do differently? Unless everyone is just too numbed right now with the whole business school experience and say that, you know what, I just need a break right now.
Oh,
Everyone's having the
yeah,
perfect experience.
I think we just had our last class this week. I actually have had no time to reflect on anything. So it's too early. Maybe I'll feel this in a couple of months from now. But yeah, I think right now it's still too early to reflect on things that could have been done differently. I'd like to think nothing at this point.
That's great. That's absolutely great. What about others?
I think in terms of academics, I focused a lot more on finance classes and the classes that helped me develop soft skills, which in turn, and because I was so focused on pivoting, I think I could have given a lot more attention to other industries and got to know what happens in those industries rather than being so hyper focused on just one industry, because business school is a great opportunity to learn about those industries from your peers. I think that's something I would do differently. Maybe I would take a lot more marketing courses or strategy courses. So.
I agree. I remember, when I started business school, everyone was so clear on, just like, and Columbia was great, right? There was no difference for career, options in terms of executive MBA full time. Everything was open to all students. So there were these recruiters who came to campus. We started, in January, and I was so lost in the whole academic experience and, just hopping from one class to another and auditing classes which I had not taken, that I completely lost the entire recruitment cycle. And people had they were changing their careers, but they had internships. And I was like, why should I take an internship? I'm doing an executive MBA. I have a job. I'll figure it out later on. And then it was too late because people were like, they were focused on that career aspect. And I was just so, enjoying the whole joyride of academics and the theoretical frameworks and, all the textbooks and all of that, I just completely lost sight of that. Yeah, I'm sure, you will probably reflect a little bit later, but I think thank you everyone so much for taking the time. I cannot emphasize enough that how much this matters to us at the Red Pen and how much this matters to me personally. Every year we speak to over 800, 900 people who come to us with their resumes, with, some hope, some dreams, some work with us, some work with others, some work on their own. But these stories remain because as a team, we are very invested. We discuss everyone's goals, profiles, resumes, documents. And somewhere I feel that, we end up becoming a part of your journey, and your stories, believe it or not, they end up becoming a part of ours. I have always said this internally now that, my journey as a business leader, because now I run another organization, and that is very much fueled by all you bright people, who I continue to work with and who had these amazing goals and ambitions of, changing the world and doing all these amazing things. And I would always reflect, what am I doing with my business degree? I need to do a lot more and solve many other problems in society, using business. So personally, it matters a lot to me, for you guys taking out the time, responding to us and, taking this 1 hour to just talk to me. So thank you very much. And, don't be surprised if, you get any LinkedIn messages, because people watch these videos many months later and then they end up reaching out to folks. But thank you very much for taking the time, for your generosity, for sharing your experiences on a weekend. And have a lovely weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Preeti. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Preeti. Thank you so much.